Welcome to Moving Medicine Forward, a podcast presented by CTI Clinical Trial and Consulting Services. This podcast is centered on advancements in healthcare and elevating individual stories and their expertise. I'm your host, Jeremy Schran, and together with my co-host, Raina Graham,
hello,
we will take you through a deep dive of CTI, clinical research, the patient journey, and much more. On today's episode of Moving Medicine Forward, we are spotlighting our Chief Human Resource Officer, Pat Deering. Listen in as we discuss how he leads the HR team to recruit, develop, and retain the industry's top talent. Welcome to the podcast, Pat. We're here to learn all about you today. So let's get a little bit of your background. Tell us about yourself and where your career started and how you got to CTI.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. This is a first for me, so I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you showing the interest. So I've been in HR for just about my entire career. After graduating college, I worked for Prudential Insurance in their group insurance side. And after a few years there, I transferred over to the corporate side. And primarily, my background in HR is deep in what was called the hard functions of HR, so benefits and compensation, that type of thing. My undergrad is finance, so it was the closest thing within HR to use to finance. Probably worked more with CFOs than I did with VPs of HR throughout my career, and built that career really intentionally through some organizations I worked for. I worked for a local hospital here, one of the best hospitals in the country, and then went back over to commercial side and spent a number of years at Chiquita Brands International when they were headquartered here in Cincinnati. And then a bulk of my career at a company called Convergys Corporation, which was a spinoff from Cincinnati Bell in the late 90s, early 2000s, and spent most of my time growing up through the benefits or exec comp side, and really gave me a good flavor for some really critical financial decisions on we're a cost center. HR is a cost center. We spend money, and really being able to manage that efficiently resonates with CEOs and CFOs. And at Convergys, for example, that was about 150,000 employees around the world. Our medical plan was probably $70 million. And so to manage that efficiently, it took notice on that. So as I built my career at Convergys, I ended up managing folks in 5 or 6 different countries on 4 different continents. It gave me the exposure to international, how to manage groups that are not located where you are, also how to learn really all the different nuances that each country has. Outside of the U.S., it's much more regulated, so a lot of labor laws that you have to be aware of as you're trying to hire people in different countries like that. So that's really how I got my start. Again, very deep, but not broad in HR. Benefits, compensation, executive compensation, stock type of compensation, equity. And then had a chance to get introduced to Paul Ritter as CTI was starting to explore internationally as well. And Paul and I first started, I thought he was just asking me how to manage people internationally. Did not think he was actually considering me for the role. Told him, but I didn't think I was a good candidate for the role because I'm not broad. I had very deep HR background, but not broad. And I guess he had better judgment than I did. And we worked out an arrangement and been here for about 10 years.
Oh, that's great. What are some of the differences between HR in a healthcare setting versus a corporate, standard company setting?
I think there's a lot of similarities. Actually, you're still managing the same types of things. So from a cost management perspective, if I stay on benefits, you're having similar types of benefits. Each industry has a little bit of difference in terms of what's attractive, what's appealing. Wellness, I would say, is more prevalent in the healthcare space than maybe some other industries. But you're really still trying to manage that cost as efficiently as possible. Again, we're not making revenue, so we have to be really efficient with how we deploy our resources. And then I would say recruiting. I think recruiting is pretty difficult in healthcare, certainly in the hospital where I work, but also here at CTI. We are looking for some really skilled, highly skilled, specialized folks for a lot of our positions, and it makes it really, really competitive. So I think the difference that I see between I'll call industry versus healthcare is that talent acquisition piece.
So what kind of strategies do you implement in those challenges for recruiting that top talent, especially here in the Midwest?
Yeah, so I would say here at CTI, I'm going to tout our RA program, our Research Associate program. That has proven to be very successful for us. We're able to hire early career folks who have some broad educational experience, but not a lot of hands-on experience. We can bring them in and train them across a variety of our different departments. And it's proven, as I mentioned, proven to be very successful. We've had all the way up to the VP level some of our RA graduates. It allows us to be nimble, so we can deploy these resources at a very cost-effective way in different parts of the organization, train into them, invest into them, help them grow, and I think the results show that they've been able to develop. That's one area. The other area is really, if it's a specialized position, really knowing how to find where those resources lie. And that can be through some different types of trade groups that we're connected with. It can be through other connections that we have. I would say my team in Europe does a really good job of knowing the different markets, knowing different recruiting agencies, knowing what's going on at other companies, and where we might be able to pull talent from.
Yeah, talking about talent and kind of people first mindset. What does people first leadership mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's just crucial. I think in any organization, but particularly nowadays, you have to be able to reach out and connect with an individual, and we always have to be keep thinking about how we're doing that. So you take our benefit programs. How can we personalize and individualize them as much as we can? I mean, there's only so much you can do. You have a group health insurance plan, for example, but what are some other things that we can be a differentiator? I think our wellness program through Personify Health is one example of that. I think resources into mental health nowadays, since COVID for sure, and with the generation coming into the workforce now, I think mental health is incredibly important. And so how we're being mindful of that, I think employees are looking for their employer for more than a paycheck. They're looking to see how they can build their lifestyle and fit their lifestyle into their work. And we have to be mindful. A lot of old school people would balk at that, but this is where the talent is, and we have to adapt to meet what the talent's asking for.
So another thing that comes with the people first is, knowing that people are all different. And so we have a DEIB program here at CTI. Speak a little bit about how we've implemented that and how it's moving forward.
Yeah, very excited about that. Came as a result of a employee-wide survey that we deployed. It was employee voice, honestly, asking for some of these things that we got through the survey, so through other focus groups that we did, and we got great response in terms of people showing an interest. So we have 13 folks on our council that represents 3 continents and probably 6 or so countries. So pretty diverse. There's a little bit of a challenge. DEI is really, really big in the U.S., not as much outside the U.S. And I think partly that because a lot of countries outside the U.S. are already better integrated. My personal opinion on that. However, it's been interesting. Our meetings have been interesting on how folks outside of the U.S. or outside of River Center view how things are decided. And it's really opened up my eyes to the perspective that they might have on how decisions get made, how business decisions get made, how HR decisions get made, that type of thing. And it's really been helpful to hear that voice. We have a charter that is almost approved. So we're working towards that. And we have some other areas that we're going to focus on in terms of recruiting is one. What is our recruiting pipeline? How can we diversify our recruiting efforts. Clinical research is not that, it's very gender-based female, but not so much in terms of other demographics such as ethnicity, for example. So where can we improve? Where can we find some other pipelines of talent that might be working with certain colleges that might have a good population of underrepresented demographic, for example, working through that, and also working through how's career progression, how's that handled? How's that, we from HR have a program in place, but how's it really implemented at the manager employee level? And we're spending a fair amount of time working through that, trying to improve that, making sure that all of our employees are feeling like they have the opportunity to progress. And I would say if you take the letters DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, I've always focused on the I and the B. I want folks to be able to come here and feel like they can be themselves and be able to do their best work. And so I want them, they can walk in no matter who they are, feel like they fit. And that's where I've kind of focused on out of that is the inclusivity piece. And politicized or not, I think that's important no matter what's going on around social or political. Making folks feel like they belong, we're going to get the best out of them.
Right, and that goes back to the people first piece.
Yeah.
That goes back to being new to the industry and being in the research associate program, really feeling the international and global piece of CTI. So.
Yeah, we are about 40, up to 40% international now. So our international population is growing, and we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful what perceptions are for sure, but how decisions get made and who we're including in those decisions as well. The more and more that we grow outside of the U.S. And it's just really emphasizing the awareness that all of us should try to work on in terms of what's going on in the rest of it. We're also right now, we've really grown our cross-country management. So we have folks managing people in other countries. And so really the manager needs to take the time to understand what's going on in that person's country, with that person in particular. You look at some of the things in the Mideast over the past year or so, that's affected some of our employees for sure. We have to be mindful, we have to be aware, we have to be sensitized to it, and understanding on where I might need to give some flexibility that maybe otherwise I wouldn't have if I hadn't thought about it.
You talked about adapting to individuals' personal lives and making sure that it works with their work schedule. How do you see remote work and hybrid work evolving and the trends with that? I mean, we've seen some ups and downs with it in recent years.
Yeah. That's an interesting dynamic. So I will tell you right away, I am not a remote work person, myself personally. During COVID, I was one of 4 people in this building every day. I don't work well from home. However, understanding that we need to be able to recruit and attract and retain talent, and that is a thing for a lot of people, we need to modify that. I do believe that there should be a pretty firm balance between remote work and office work. I will say I'm not a subscriber or believer of 100% remote work. And now if we have an employee in a location where we don't have an office, obviously that will happen. But where we have office locations, I really think there's so much of the social piece that folks get when they come in. I think it goes back to the mental health piece, that people may not be feeling isolated, but getting in a room with someone and talking through an issue usually results in a better outcome than if you're doing it some other way. I might be a little bit of an old guy on this view. I do think that there's a role for remote work. We're continuing to look at our remote work policies around all of our locations around the world. But I would expect that we're going to have a balance between what folks coming into offices when they're located near an office versus the flexibility that we can give them.
We're speaking remote and some of the DEIB stuff, it feels like there's always constant change. How do you manage the change with respect to the people and how things, sometimes humans are resistant to change and Sometimes we get a lot more change, sometimes we get less. How do you manage that from an HR
So,
perspective?
admittedly, not well sometimes. I will say I don't always handle it well. It takes a lot of perseverance, and I feel like you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? You have to understand where they're coming from. Empathy, I think. I think empathy is a huge, huge quality trait for a leader. I'm kind of a servant leader kind of model. And I think you have to be empathetic, but you also have to, again, balance that with the needs of the business. And it can get tough. And we might have someone who does not ever want to come into this office. They might do a pretty good job too, working. But if we're saying our culture is we want people together when they can be together, and someone doesn't want to come in, then we actually have to say, is this a good fit for both of us, for the company and the employee? And even if the employee is a good employee in terms of technical competence, maybe it's just not the greatest fit because we want the vibrancy of people being together. So I think there's empathy. I think there's pragmatism in terms of what are the needs of the business. And then I think you negotiate and compromise.
What are you looking forward to the most in the future of CTI? Where do you see it going? What are you looking forward to in the near future? What are you looking forward in like the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think I'm very bullish on CTI. I think there are some good things coming down the pike, and I think that we will continue to be, I think, the leader in rare disease. We specialize in cell and gene therapy and rare disease, and I think that our talent is off the charts. Allows us to compete with the huge CROs in this space very, very well. And I expect more of that. I would think that further down the road, I would think that we probably would go back and look at being acquisitive again. And are there some other companies that we can grow? We've done a very good job for most of our 25 years growing organically. Over the last few years, we've grown some through acquisition. And I would think that in the next few years, there'll probably be opportunities again to look at some other markets, some other businesses that might help us grow that way.
How does HR play a role in acquisitions?
Oh, that's a great question. So integration is huge. So there's certainly the financial piece to that, but there's also the people piece. So it's a lot of roll your sleeves up and where do we have redundancies from the company that's being acquired coming into our company? How do we want to make their folks and their structure fit into our structure? It's really having a lot of conversation with leaders on both sides. I think the company that is being acquired has some say, and they can offer the best insight on from their perspective. So I think it's a very open dialogue. I think we've done that with our acquisitions very well, but it's really how we get on these people to fit into how our people fit.
Right, merging those two different cultures.
Yeah, and the culture piece. Yeah, that was just kind of almost mechanical of how am I going to pick up this organization and put it in this organization, but then what's the culture at this company? How does it match up with our culture? And then where do we need to make sure our culture permeates through the company that we're acquiring?
So that's CTI's future. What about just HR in general? What trends do you see coming in the near future?
Yeah, I go back to the individualizing and personalizing the experience for the employee. I think you really have to speak to the individual. I think you have to, our long career folks have different needs than our newer career folks, right? And so one size fits all package doesn't really work. And it's so how can we meet the needs of each of those types of demographics? So I feel like organizations that can reach out to an individual is going to be much more successful to keep that person motivated.
Thank you for joining us today, Pat. We're really lucky to have you and just here as part of the team. And thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and the interest in HR. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy discovering how medicine is moving forward, or you are interested in how CTI could help you with clinical research, be sure to subscribe. Follow us on social media or visit our website at ctifacts.com.